Ha! April Fools. Hello, everyone, and welcome to William Maranci, the show hosted by William Maranci. I do not want this to be a tea channel, but today we have some tea, and it is tea from across the pond from northern England, and it is about the man, the myth, the legend, Rick Astley. So Rick Astley has been a beloved figure online for quite some time, since the advent of 4chan and the Rick roll. People unanimously seem to think Rick Astley is a really sweet and down-to-earth guy. And I am here to talk about something that he recently did that I find to be the exact opposite. Rick Astley is suing Young Gravy over his song Betty, Get Money, which samples a sound-alike of Never Gonna Give You Up, created for Get Money. Not because they didn't have permission to do the sound-alike. The producer involved with making the sound-alike basically stole his voice, recreating his voice so, dead on that the public wouldn't be able to tell the difference if they were played the vocal tracks back to back. And the lawyer that Rick has enlisted is also responsible for the blurred lines case and the upset that that turned into. Worst of all, I was siding with Robin Thicke in that case. So if you listen to the acapella of Never Gonna Give You Up and the acapella of Betty Get Money back to back, you can definitely hear some minor differences in the voices.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down. You know the rules, and it's money. I know.
Yes, the voice on Betty kind of sounds like Rick Astley, but it also kind of sounds like pretty much any other white R&B singer from the 80s. And also, during the Get Money part, it almost sounds like the producer is trying too hard to sound like Rick Astley, so it winds up sounding different enough from Never Gonna Give You Up. Never Gonna Give You Up, the acapella sounds a lot more effortless, and it also sounds a lot less processed. I think if you pointed out the differences I just brought up in the courtroom, people would be able to hear those differences. And I think it's also important to address that a lot of listeners in the 80s, when they heard this song and hadn't seen the music video, thought Rick Astley was a person of color. The people who wrote this song, Doc Aiken Waterman, were inspired by the song Trapped by Colonel Abrams, who is a black R&B artist from the 80s.
I guess they think that I'm not good enough for you.
And if you listen to the vocals on that song, they actually sound somewhat similar to Astley's. I mean, obviously, Rick Astley's voice is somewhat distinct, but to say that his voice is entirely his without really trying hard to sound like black R&B artists of the 70s and 80s is foolish. I think it's also time where we shout out one of Rick Astley's friends, Dave Grohl. Foo Fighters and Rick Astley actually on stage performed a cover of Never Gonna Give You Up with Rick on vocals, and the instrumental was kind of like in that sort of Smells Like Teen Spirit Nirvana vein, and I do wish more musicians would do stuff like that. And Rick Astley is also claiming that this is doing some kind of financial damage to him and is taking money out of his pocket. Dave and Rick are good friends, so obviously they're going to see eye to eye on this issue.
When it's someone that sold 50 million records and they got 50 million fucking dollars and they're bitching about pennies, fuck you, man.
Okay, well, it's not exactly the same. Rick has only sold 40 million records. And I do wonder, why hasn't Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic sued the guy from Seether or the guy from Puddle of Mud for trying to sound like them? Even if you're trying to sound like somebody, there are going to be little quirks that set you apart. Music is much more about imitation than anyone really wants to admit that it is. And I think nothing good can come of this lawsuit long term for musicians. So yeah, I know I'm hitting on a lot of topics on this video. There will be plenty of sources in the comments, don't worry. But I think I'm gonna end with the origin of the Rickroll. The Never Gonna Give You Up music video that started the Rickroll was re-uploaded by someone who did not have permission to upload that song anywhere. Yet that's the origin of the Rickroll and the biggest reason why Rick Astley is still a relevant figure today. Rick if you are watching this video, I really want you to reconsider this. I do worry about how this lawsuit will affect copyright law going forward. I do believe that the sound-alike that Young Gravy and Company used does sound distinct enough from Never Gonna Give You Up. I know this is a more serious video than most of you were expecting me to make for April Fool's Day, but cases like these really grind my gears. Just knowing what I've known about Rick Astley, this case caught me way off guard. So I'm really hoping that Rick will consider dropping the lawsuit, because I don't think anything good can come from it for copyright law and music. This has been William Maranci. Thank you. Oh no!